I've been doing seminars on country living for 10 years. And during this time, we have made videos, and my friends, on subjects having to do with country living, of Bible prophecy related to end times, and that kind of thing. And you can find these 430 videos at preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. They're on YouTube, but on the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. But the problem is with 430 videos, it's hard to find what you're looking for. So the website categorizes them in groups, and we'll talk about those groups. And I'm videotaping this session, so if some of you have to leave for ASI or for Pathfinder Camporee, you can catch up later on by watching the videos on the website. So we have, like I say, 430 videos. They also are podcasts. So when you go to the site and you look at what you're interested in, there's a video that's a YouTube video, but I also record it in audio. So let's say you want to listen to it in your car going to work. Yeah, you don't have the graphics and all that, but you can do that by downloading onto your phone the audio podcast. And then there's also handouts, lots of handouts and stuff like that. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm a teacher, and they say when they teach you to be a teacher, you should tell them what you're going to do, you should do it, you should tell them what you did. So here's what we're going to do through the week. Today, I'm going to tell you our personal country living journey. Then we're going to talk about the end of life as we know it. And then we're going to briefly touch on grid down dangers, like what could make the power grid go down, and Ellen White's counsels on leaving the cities. And then at the request of the conference president, he said, I want you to make sure that you include information for people that don't live in the country, that are wanting to move to the country, but they haven't got there yet. And what I'm going to show you is that don't wait until you are in the country to learn how to garden. You can't just snap your fingers and be a gardener. Matter of fact, my wife's the gardener, I'm the fence builder. So I've got a long way to go, but I have some good things to share with you about that with her counsel. So I'm calling that balcony gardening. Okay, and then tomorrow, Tuesday, this is kind of the core of the topic, and that is alternatives to the grids on which we depend. For instance, when we think of the grid being off grid or something like terminology like that, it's talking about the power grid. But my suggestion is that anything that you pay for is on some kind of a grid. It can be buying food, that's a food grid. It could be medical, it could be financial. There's all kinds of things that you pay money for that if you couldn't do it anymore, what would you do? And so we're going to analyze tomorrow these different things that we pay money for and give you suggestions of alternatives that you could maybe plan towards now, so that, you know, we know that there's going to be a time when you can't buy or sell. That's in the Bible. It's going to happen, and probably in our near lifetime. But we also could lose our services anytime without notice, such as the power grid going down, and we'll talk about that later on. But anyway, so that's tomorrow. Wednesday, we're going to talk about leaving the city trends. With COVID and the things that happened in the last few years, there's been a huge migration of people from Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, moving to Idaho and Montana to get away from the chaos that they've been experiencing. So that's what we're going to explore. Then we're going to look about spiritual reasons to move into the country. And when are we instructed to move? This is a really important one, because you will hear people that, oh, you went to that country living seminar. We don't have to do anything. My bread and water will be sure. God's going to take care of me. And we're going to contrast those and show how that's not a correct understanding. And most of you probably already understand that. And then we're going to look about some Sunday law movements and how that plays into the time when we should be moving out into the country. So that's Wednesday. Thursday, We're going to talk about, okay, you want to move into the country, or maybe you're in the country and it isn't the ideal property that you were hoping for. We're going to talk about what are some ideal things to look for in country property, because there's lots of things to consider, what to look for and how to find it. And I'm going to show you free tools that are online that you can use on your smartphone as you drive around and look at property. You can spy on that property. You can look at what they paid for it, who owns it, is the person in there a renter, aerial views to see what's around the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty interesting. And then we're going to do a country property tour of a house written or built by the person who wrote the book on country living, and that we'll have a tour of that property. And then Friday, the spiritual part is the most important. I've written this book, Sustainable Country Living, and I'm done writing, and we're proofing a second book called Spiritual Preparations for the Time of Trouble, because if all you do is prepare and you're not covering the spiritual part, you're missing the whole point. Because if you're not spiritually connected, you're not going to make it through anyway. God can only protect you if you're spiritually connected with him. So we're going to talk about preparation versus presumption, balancing physical and spiritual preparation. And then you don't want to miss Friday. We're going to have a person who is going to personally tell her story of how God gave her country property. They came from Russia with nothing but suitcases. She cleaned houses for a living. And she came to my seminar years ago and became convicted that they needed to move in the country. And we were in the cafeteria at Washington Camp Meeting, and she walked in, and I told my wife, I said, do you know that person? I kind of recognize her. She came right to our table. She says, I need to talk to you. I need to tell you this story. So it's amazing. And then she's going to tell us, now that they have that country property, some opportunities that might interest you in terms of training sessions, and or even if you're retired and you want to live in their place. So that's Friday. Don't miss it. Okay, let's get started. The reason I wrote this book is because when I would do seminars on country living, I'm trying to give you questions and answers at the end because of the next class coming right in. We're going to maybe be short-sighted on that, but in my question and answer times, oftentimes people will say, well, what about me? I can't afford to buy country property. What about me? I'm too old. What about me? I'm too young. Don't have any money. What to do while you're still in the city, and the need to be off-grid a resource. So people said to me, you need to write a book, because you've got these 430 videos available on everything we could possibly think of having to do with country living. But what if the grid goes down and we can't get to it anymore? We need to have something printed that I can have on my shelf as a resource. So that's why I wrote the book, and it's 380 pages long, and you can see that at the end if you're interested. Okay, first of all, the title is Sustainable Country Living, and I want to define sustainable because in the Save the Planet world, the environmentalist kind of mindset, sustainability means something different than what we're talking about. Sustainability in their mind has to do with saving the planet, recycling and all that. I'm an online educator, and in the past I taught a construction planning course online for a university, and the textbook was called Integrated Design for Sustainable Building. So the whole course was talking about sustainable building. How do you build a building that's going to fit the environmental, keep the earth safe kind of thing? And unfortunately, part of that mindset is to get everybody to move into the cities. And here's a quote from the book. Most of the dwellings are within 5-minute walk to the center. A transit stop is located in the center. These are called, I think, 15-minute cities, or variations of that. So they get everybody living together, come in out of the country, live in the city We'll put you in these little mini communities that has everything you need within walking distance. You don't need a car, okay? But Ellen White says in Country Living, page 9, again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country where they can raise their own provisions. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. What is the reason here given? There's many reasons. She talks about children and everything. What's the reason here to move to the city, or out of the city? Yeah, be able to feed yourself. Sustainability of being able to feed yourself. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to last very long. Now, here's our personal journey. If you look at this picture, there's a riding arena there. If you look in the far left, in the distance, there's a house. That's our previous country home. And we raised our kids in the country. We knew the council to get out of the cities, to raise kids in the country. And we built a house that didn't have any neighbors, even though it was on a lot. But then as our first child was born, we thought, this isn't good enough. We need to have a little bit of elbow room. So we bought 5 acres and built another house. And then when the kids got to be old enough to outgrow our 8th grade Adventist school, by the way, we had agreed, my wife had insisted, we're never moving again, we're never building again, don't even ask. And so one day I said, well, what are we going to do when the kids get to 9th grade? Are we going to put them in public school? I taught in public school. No. Are you going to homeschool? Well, we did that to begin with. I don't want to do that for 9th grade. What are we going to do? And I said, do you realize if we moved to the other side of our county, we could still go to the same church, our kids could still go to the same school, but when they outgrow it, then we're within a carpool range of 3 schools, that Adventist schools that have. So very reluctantly, we moved to that house. We built that house, and it was really nice. As the kids got older and as the property became available contiguous to us, vacant 5-acre parcels, we bought some more so that later on when the kids got old enough and wanted to move, they could be in our neighborhood, because this was a hobby farm neighborhood. And so as the lots got built on, then we're thinking, well, if they want to come back, we wouldn't have it. So we ended up buying contiguous parcels and had 27 acres eventually. So anyway, what happened is they went away to school, and they made it clear they didn't want to come back to our rainy Grays Harbor, Washington, which is over by the ocean. It rains a lot. And so, okay, fine. So we decided, my parents had spent the winters in Arizona with a bunch of relatives. And they would say to us, you guys, you ought to come down to Arizona. This is really great. I'm thinking, why would anybody want to go to Arizona? Snakes, scorpions, cactus, forget it. So year after year, we didn't go. And then one year, we decided to humor them. And so we got in the car and drove to Arizona. And it was 70s degrees, short sleeve, golfing on Christmas. It's like, I can get used to this. This is pretty cool. So later that year, we ended up selling our business, thank God. And so we knew nothing about investing in stocks or anything like that. So what we decided to do is we thought the baby boomers are going to go south. There were lots of Canadians that went down there. My relatives were Canadians. They're going to want to go south. They're going to want to play golf. They're going to want to live in an adult community. So we said, why don't we take money from selling the business? Why don't we buy a house on a golf course in an adult gated community that mom and dad can live in when they go down there, because they were in an 18-foot camping trailer. So we did, and they lived in it. And then when we'd have Christmas vacations, we'd go down and join them. So the years went by, and they ended up not being able to do it anymore as they aged. And we really liked going down there. So the kids at that point said, we don't want to come back to rainy Grays Harbor. So we thought, okay, we'll get someone to mow the lawn and kind of keep the place up. We'll get a house sitter, And when we come back, we just got to pick up and go. We did that. The lawn mowing was a failure. The guy in the house didn't work out. And it was a disaster. It took us like a month to get the place back into shape. If you've got acreage and you leave it alone, and so we said, okay, this isn't going to work. We're either going to get rid of the country property because the kids aren't coming back anyway, or we'll quit doing Arizona. We talked to the kids and said, no, don't quit doing Arizona. This is fun. So we decided to sell the country property and build a place that was similar to what we had in Arizona, which was a house on a golf course on a 60-foot lot. 60 feet is about as wide as this building, okay? It's not big. And so we did. So we sold that house. We drew plans. We built our next house. Getting real tired of building houses. And we moved into that place, and everything was turnkey. We had duplicate clothes at both places. You could just lock the door and go. Lock the door and go. And we said, this is great. We can spend the rest of our life in this scenario. This is great. About this time, our daughter gets married, and she marries a guy who lives 20 minutes from us and Arizona. So we went down there. We'd already sold. We'd already done the house on the golf course. And they said, hey, you want to go to the church? And so they said, you want to go to these country living seminars at the church? Sure, we like country living. So we went, and it was put on by Meissners from Northern Idaho, Adventist people. And we got halfway through that, and we looked at each other and said, what in the world are we doing? We know better than this. We're supposed to be in the country. Mesa, where our Arizona place is, 500,000 people, and it's just a suburb. It's not even a city. And so we said, we got to change. This is not right. And so our daughter and husband and us got focused on where are we going to go? We're going to move in the country. So we moved from the country to the city, and then we went to this seminar, and it convinced us we needed to move out. So now we're in Arizona. We're in the mindset of, we're going to get out of Dodge. I'm researching all these aspects that I'm going to tell you some things about. And then Kathy goes to Sprouts, which is kind of like a Trader Joe's small grocery store that has all kinds of neat stuff. She went there at 10 o'clock in the morning, and all the produce was gone. There wasn't a single thing there. And we knew that if some major catastrophe happened, that the grocery store shelves would be empty in 3 days, if not sooner. That's in the back of her mind. She goes there, and it's already empty, and it's not even a catastrophe. So she asked the manager of the produce, what's the deal? And he said, well, our truck hasn't come yet today. That's all it took, is the truck not coming, and everything was gone, because it's just-in-time delivery. Well, that was our wake-up call in Arizona. If that happened so fast without a crisis, what would happen if there was a crisis? So then we went back to Washington in our house on the golf course, and there was a power failure, and it's winter. No big deal. We got a natural gas fireplace. Natural gas still works when there's a power failure. The problem is we can't light the fireplace. It will not light without electricity telling it to go. So we're sitting there freezing. We're going, this is really dumb. We've made a big mistake. We got to change this. So that was our own personal thing, but you've all experienced some that were global. Washington State, this Life Care Center nursing home that was the first place somebody died in the United States is what originally was an Adventist chain of nursing homes all over the country. I don't know who owned this one at the time, but that's where it started, was at Kirkland Life Care Centers, and it went global, as you know. And then this happened. Now it's not the produce section, it's the toilet paper at Costco, right? And everything else. So we have seen, all of us, how quickly things can change. I was teaching Sabbath school. We had like 45 people in the class, and I had 2 doctors. And after this had happened with the Kirkland deal, our county health person had made an announcement that if you're at high risk, you should make precautions because this is dangerous. And so when my class was done, I told the class, I said, I'm just letting you know that I'm at high risk. I'm diabetic. I'm over 70, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm in that category. So I'm not going to teach this class live anymore. I'm going to do it online if you want to continue. One of my participants is sitting here. And I was reading body language of two of these doctors. And one of them, I was reading, if I was reading it right, he's saying, you're overreacting. This is ridiculous. And then the other one's going, yeah, brother, you better do this, right? Well, that was the Sabbath that our new pastor had come, Ron Helverson Jr., you might have heard of him. And we were really excited to have him as a new pastor. And he did his first sermon, the place was packed. The next sermon, the church was empty. That's how quick it happened. It just happened like overnight. So I want to show you some ways that life can change quickly.
The people were eating out of the garbage can, sleeping on the street, any place that they could sleep. They had a blanket they could spread in the bus station, train station. They would spread it in a corner, any place they could see. That's where they would spend the night. With no money.
I'd heard this commotion out in the hallway one time, and it was winter, and this family was being evicted out of the building. They had 2 children, and we used to play with the kids, and they were the same age. And I went downstairs with my cousin, and here was all their furniture out on the sidewalk, right on the edge of the street, not on the street, but right on the curb, where people could still walk by, but there, I remember seeing their dressers and their couch and different pieces of furniture, and the 2 kids were sitting up on top of one of the dressers, and it was snowing. And I said, my mom came down, and I said, Mom, what's going on? And she said, well, they couldn't pay the rent, you know, they got evicted. We suffered a little bit in the Depression for lack of food. Food was scarce. The 4 adults weren't working. My mom found a job working in a hot dog stand, and she was able to bring some of the buns home, and once in a while some of the hot dogs. But my uncle did menial labor now and then, and he was able to bring home some food. I can remember my uncle getting some of the older potatoes from the guy downstairs that we got to know, and bringing them up and making a potato pancake for us. And we were lucky to get an onion in it ground up, but he would make a good potato pancake. And us cousins would sit on a towel on the center of the living room floor. We didn't have much furniture, and that's what we had to eat for the whole day.
In the city, you had to buy everything you eat. Everything you eat, you had to buy.
We're all probably familiar with these stories and images from the Great Depression. But it's an often forgotten fact that many of these heart-rending accounts have a common denominator: location.
Now, Roscoe Bartlett has retired, but there's chairs up here, you guys, if you want. He's a Seventh-day Adventist that was a 20-term congressman in the U.S. Congress. He was one of, I think, 3 or 4 scientists. And he's going to talk about the danger of our power grid in the US, and trust me, Canada is no different.
As disconcerting as bioterrorism and the pandemic threat is, one factor has contributed more to the utterly dependent state of this nation than any other: electricity.
If you just think today about the world we live in and all of the creature comforts we have, you will recognize that essentially none of them would be there without electricity. It is the power source for almost everything out there. You can't communicate. If the electrons don't flow in your car, the gasoline won't explode in the cylinders and you won't go down the road. So if you cut off the flow of electrons in our world today, it's just a whole different world. And the grid upon which we depend for almost everything is very vulnerable. It is just at the tipping point is the way that the experts will characterize it. Our demand has grown, and the grid has grown just barely enough to keep up with demand. And it is really almost a Rube Goldberg kind of thing. And the least little perturbation can bring parts of the grid tumbling down, as happened in Florida not very long ago. The great Northeast blackout of several years ago. A tree limb fell on a wire out in Ohio and caused a great blackout half a dozen years or so ago. Any little thing can bring down large parts of the grid. It is very vulnerable to terrorists. I am told that there are a dozen substations in the country that are so critical to the function of the grid that if terrorists took out those dozen substations, the grid would come down. And could have events in the future where the power grid will go down and it's not in any reasonable time coming back on. For instance, if when the power grid went down, some of our large transformers were destroyed, damaged beyond use. We don't make any of those in this country. They're made overseas, and you order one, and 18 months to 2 years later, they will deliver it. Our power grid is very vulnerable. It is very much on the edge. Our military knows that. And sometimes it's very difficult to do what they call a black start. That is, to start without electricity. Many of the things that produce electricity need electricity to start them spinning. And if you don't have electricity, how do you do that? They call it a black start. And many of our big power producing turbines and so forth cannot do a black start. They've got to have electricity from somewhere else to charge them and get them spinning so that they can then start making electricity. If you go do a Google search and go on the web, this isn't some strange knowledge that the Congress has and nobody else has. It's out there. This is pretty widely known that our grid is very vulnerable. And if you just think about all the things that are important in your life, how many of them wouldn't be there if the grid has gone down? You can get some measure as to what the world is going to be like, what your country is going to be like, what your community is going to be like if we don't have power.
A panel of experts at the Universal Peace Federation has now issued a warning on the growing threat of EMP or electromagnetic pulse weapons. Such an attack can knock out virtually all communications and other critical services of countries in a matter of minutes. For long, experts have warned that key electrical infrastructure in the United States remains particularly vulnerable to an electromagnetic pulse attack or EMP, likely to be orchestrated by China, North Korea, or even Russia. The Universal Peace Federation specialists have now said that the US is at a pivotal moment if it wants to avoid a potential doomsday scenario. But to analyze the risk, we must first understand what an EMP is and how it can be weaponized. An EMP weapon is one that directs a massive explosion of energy over an intended target, much like lightning. But in contrast to other conventional weapons, an EMP explosion does not physically harm humans. What it does, though, is cripple all electronic devices and infrastructure within its radius. The weapon at first is glided directly above an intended target. These weapons, according to the US nomenclature, are classified as high-altitude electromagnetic pulse or HEMP. A HEMP attack can interfere with radio frequency and instantly produce damaging voltage in electronic devices across thousands of miles. It can hinder fuel distribution, transport, food and water supply, and most importantly, communications, especially military communications. Such attacks can permanently immobilize vehicles with modern electronic ignition and control systems. Several congressional hearings and commissions in the U.S. have flagged the vulnerabilities of the American power grid. In 2015, a congressional committee testified in a joint hearing to discuss EMP weapons and preparedness. It asserted that a nationwide grid collapse, either via hemp attacks or other conventional methods, had the potential to wipe out up to 90% of the American population.
Here is what that was saying in brief. An EMP, an enemy blows a small atomic bomb high above the atmosphere, and anything line of sight, if it was in the center of the US, it would get the lower part of Canada, coast to coast United States, and anything in line of sight that's microelectronics would be dead. The power grid would go down. So your cell phone wouldn't work, your computers wouldn't work, your car won't start, planes are falling out of the sky. So that's the first attack that an enemy would do, and it could even be done by a terrorist. So it's a serious thing, but we don't see it. It's never happened, so we kind of get blind to it. But when it happens, it's too late. And what she said at the end is the U.S. government says that if there was an EMP, that because of the infrastructure going down, not able to do fuel, not able to generate electricity, et cetera, 90% of the population would die within 6 months. Because, if you're on a dialysis machine, you're not going to make it, et cetera. So here's one more danger of the grid going down.
Former Federal Energy Regulatory Chairman John Wellinghoff said that last April's sniper attack on a power station near San Jose, California, was an act of domestic terrorism. The little-known attack occurred before 1 a.m. on April 16th of last year. A group of attackers cut telecommunications cables in an underground vault near Highway 101. The assailants then approached a Metcalf transmission substation. After sending out a signal by flashlight, they fired AK-47s at its transformers. More than 100 shell casings were later found at the site. They seem to have targeted the transformers' oil-filled cooling systems, which began leaking oil after numerous gunshots. The transformers did not explode, and the attackers fled the scene after waving the flashlight again. Wellinghoff said he was going public because he was concerned about national security and worried that larger-scale attacks on electric grid sites are now in the works.
Okay, so there's a danger of a cyber attack as compared to an EMP. Your computers and stuff would still work with a cyber attack, but they could take the grid down.
Power stations are often surrounded by security fencing and guarded by round-the-clock patrols. But the real danger may not come from a physical attack on a facility, but through cyber attacks on the connected sites by hackers thousands of miles away.
We're seeing people looking for vulnerabilities, people scanning to see what types of openings they can find.
Inside the nation's largest power grid operator, cybersecurity experts keep watch for intruders 24/7. An Associated Press investigation found that the networks running the U.S. power grid remain vulnerable, despite repeated warnings by cybersecurity experts and increased efforts to stop the attacks.
We're still in this era where everyone believes it's secure by default. And it's not.
The Associated Press says that nearly a dozen times in the past decade, foreign hackers have gained remote access to networks that run the grid, which supplies power to the military, mass transit, businesses, and millions of Americans. While none of the intrusions resulted in the catastrophic blackouts lasting days or even weeks feared by the intelligence community, that possibility remains.
It's all real. It's all, there's lots of variables, lots of potentials that could happen.
Identifying the source of cyber attacks is notoriously difficult, but private firms have alleged that recent attacks launched against the U.S. power grid were carried out by hacking teams within Russia, China, and Iran, some with their government's support. Even the Islamic State terrorist group is trying to hack American power companies, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Security experts say the country's power system is aging and outdated, never built with network security in mind, and fixes often take way too long.
In the case of a large cyber attack on the U.S., We can't be calling up vendors and having them say, sorry, it's going to take us 8 months to get this patched.
But the experts believe hackers may have already infiltrated networks that control parts of the grid, even if they have not yet used that access to turn out the lights.
So we have 3 ways you could lose power, and this is talking about the U.S., but if there was an EMP, it would get Canada just the same because it's line of sight. So you got an EMP, which is an atomic blast overhead, and you've got somebody physically attacking it, and the fear of that one that they showed in California, where the guys shot at it. The government is afraid that was a practice run, and if they had teams at all of the main sites, they could take them all down at the same time. And then the last one is cyber attack, and they believe that the robots or whatever are already in the system. All they got to do is press the button and go. Okay, now let's switch gears. Let's see what the Spirit of Prophecy has to say about getting out of harm's way. This is Country Living, page 5. Instead of the crowded city, seek some retired situation. By the way, I researched that. That doesn't mean retirement. That means some quiet, comfortable place. Instead of the crowded city, seek some retired situation where your children may be, so far as possible, shielded from temptation, and there train and educate them for usefulness. So this is talking about the benefit to kids. This one's talking about avoiding danger. The time is near when the large cities will be visited by the judgments of God. In a little while, these cities will be terribly shaken. One of the links on the handout that I'm giving you, I did research into the different cities that Ellen White mentions by name, and it's really interesting. Avoiding destruction. Calamities will come, calamities most awful, most unexpected, and these destructions will follow one right after the other. Before the overflowing scourge shall come upon the dwellers of the earth, the Lord calls upon all who are the Israelites indeed to prepare for that event. There's not one family in 100 who will be improved physically, mentally, or spiritually by residing in the city. Faith, hope, love, happiness can far better be gained in retired places, there's that word again, where there are fields and hills and trees. If, in the providence of God, we can secure places away from the cities, the Lord would have us do this. There are troublous times before us. The time has come when, as God opens the way, families should move out of the cities and children should be taken into the country. On Wednesday, we're going to delve more into that when the time has come. Parents can secure small homes in the country with land for cultivation where they can have orchards and where they can raise vegetables and small fruits. Notice it doesn't say a big place. It doesn't say you have to be off-grid. It doesn't even say you have to buy it. You need to secure it, a small home. And like I say, on Friday, you're going to hear a testimony of someone who had no money, who God gave them country property. As God's commandment-keeping people, we must leave the cities. As Enoch, we must work the cities, but not dwell in them. Again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country where they can raise their own provisions. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. Now, we're going to shift gears again. At the request of the conference president here, I have included some ideas. If you still live in the city, you might even live on the 10th floor in an apartment high-rise. Don't wait to learn how to garden. While you're waiting for the opportunity and God leading you to the right time and the place to move, you can get your skills going and learn. Of course, you can research online, you can read books and things, but you can also get your hands dirty and do gardening. So I'm going to show you some examples of people who are gardening who don't live in the country. For instance, notice the picture really carefully. How high above the ground do you think these flowers, these plants are? These are herbs and stuff. They're probably on the 5th floor. This one here, this is pretty cool. There's no sound, I'll explain it. This person is showing how to grow tomatoes, and they're doing it on, there's a concrete floor, a concrete wall. They take bananas and slice them. They take the seeds from the cherry tomatoes and put them on the bananas. They're putting in some potting soil there, placing the bananas on there. Remember, the seeds are sitting there, the red part. Put a little more dirt on top. And then they're going to make a little miniature greenhouse here. Put a little water on it. There's the greenhouse. Just leave it sitting there on the deck, patio. And now they're going to make a container in which to grow the tomato plants. So this is looks like a 1 liter bottle, and they're cutting little V's where the plant's going to go, about finger size. They made a bunch of them around. They're cutting the top off, that handle off. They're not going to need that. And then they're going to cut the bottom off because that is going to be hung upside down. So this way they can get to there to put in water and stuff like that. For the most part, this is all free. Then they take what do you call it? It's like a solder iron and punch in some holes. Now, this guy is hanging this on a concrete wall. They don't say how he does it, but he's hammering a nail that apparently can go in a concrete wall to hold it, but it could be done a variety of ways. Then she puts some potting soil in. Five days later, the greenhouse has done its work. There it is. 5 days, she's got baby tomatoes going, plants. Then she takes a little seedling and shoves it in that triangular hole. Makes a hole with her finger, shoves it in, packs it down from up above. Squirts some more water inside and out. 10 days. Obviously, it's on the sunny side, I would think, of the house. Taking some banana peelings, sticking it in the top for some extra nutrients. A little more potting soil. Because the plant's getting bigger, it's going to need more root space. Now she's not squirting water, she's pouring it in. 25 days, look at that. Isn't that cool? I mean, it's loaded. How much does that cost? Basically nothing. Pretty cool. Okay, now here's a high-rise balcony gardening. This doesn't have any sound, but I want you to notice how high she is above the ground. They're looking down on the roofs of buildings. That's pretty high up. Right out their door, they got herbs and everything fresh for eating. Has to be well over 10 stories high. It's just a little balcony. Look how much produce they got there. Now, this one here is someone that's got a deck off the back of their house, and she wanted to make a planter out of those totes you can buy like at Costco, the yellow.
I decided to build a solar-powered, self-watering, super stylish, modular planter that's totes easy to build. This planter design had to meet some very specific criteria. First, it had to look good because it's up at the house and my husband Adam has very fancy taste. It also had to completely care for itself because I'm not exaggerating when I say I leave the house in the morning to go milk the cow and I very rarely come back before it's time to cook dinner. And of course the last thing is that it needs to be easily accessible to the kitchen, which it is. Using these storage totes in this design was not only convenient for me because I just moved across the country and had a whole bunch of them to spare, but also because it literally allows me to have a modular garden. I could have 6 different planters planted with different plants and switch them out as needed. The real magic of the self-watering garden starts right here. This solar panel collects the sun's energy and powers a little timer attached to a pump. The timer tells the pump when to go off, and the pump, using these 2 little sensors, can gather water from any kind of rain collecting device. The water is sucked up through this little filter, through this tube, all the way up to the garden. I absolutely love this planter for so many reasons. It's easy to build. It actually only cost me about $10 worth of materials to build the whole thing. It provides the herbs right by my kitchen where I wanted them. The solar-powered rain collection system delivers water right to my plants, but not so much that it drips down on my deck and makes a mess. I also really love this planter design because it's completely adaptable to whatever your needs may be. If you have deck space for this exact design, great. But if you're in a rental situation where you don't have space for a permanent garden, you can actually lose the legs off of here and add more modules so that you have even more growing space that's still completely portable.
So you could do it just with the tote, not do all the wood stuff, just have totes out on your deck. And here's some strawberries that they put in paint buckets, hanging on the deck. Look how high they are above the ground.
I've been gardening for many years now using only containers and very limited space. My balcony is only 84 square feet and I pack it with anywhere from 25 to 30 plants every spring, summer, and fall. Over the years, I've learned quite a lot growing in containers and utilizing my small space, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you guys today, hopefully inspire a few of you to get growing no matter what size your outdoor space is. So let's go ahead and get started. My first tip for growing in a small space is to make sure you are utilizing your vertical space. One way I do this is growing in a stackable planter. I love using this planter to grow all different types of lettuces, which is what I'm showing here, but you could easily grow other plants as well as long as they have a shallow root system. In this planter, I'm growing about 12 heads of lettuce, so you could see just how much you can grow in such a small space. I highly recommend you try this if you're looking to grow more in less space. Another way I utilize my vertical space is by growing in hanging baskets. I've grown strawberries every year in my hanging baskets because they drape over the edge of the container. It keeps them away from squirrels and pests as they're hanging in the air. And yeah, you can grow a lot of strawberries. I like to grow the ever-bearing variety so you get multiple harvests throughout the season. Here is my hanging basket that I use for all of my herbs, and this is another great way to plant multiple herbs together in a small space. You can also use different trellises or supports for your plant to get it to grow upwards. So this is a sugar pea, this is actually a dwarf variety, and I've just used a trellis to keep the plant growing upwards. I've also done this for my cucumber plant, cherry tomato plant, and different ones that you want to grow up taller instead of wider. This allows the plant to be more compact while also providing it with support as it grows. Moving on to tip number 2, which is really important, and that's growing container-friendly plants. When you're growing in containers, it really does matter which type of plants you are choosing. Certain varieties do better in containers, and it can get a little confusing with how many different seeds there are. One of the main things you're going to be looking for on the package is a dwarf, patio, or bush variety of seeds. So this is a bush variety of cucumber opposed to a vining. It's going to grow a lot better in a container. Along with bush zucchini, it's the same kind of thing. You don't really want a huge vining plant. It's better to grow a bush variety that's more compact. Another great choice for containers is tomatoes, and you most likely want to grow a determinate variety, so that's one that doesn't continue to grow in size. It'll only grow to a few feet tall and then set all of its fruit. I prefer growing this in my container garden as it takes up way less space than an indeterminate variety. Another type of seed to look for is a bush variety of green beans. This is a tender green. You can also grow all different types of peppers in containers. They're only going to grow to be 3 to 4 feet tall, so they make really good container plants. I love growing banana peppers, hot peppers, bell peppers. Any type that you like is going to do really well in a container. Another thing I really enjoy planting is kale, and this is of course a dwarf variety of kale. This type of kale doesn't get too big, but it's still very high producing. And as I mentioned earlier, strawberries are another great choice. They are a container-friendly plant. They do really well in containers, and they definitely are a staple in my summer garden. Leafy greens are another great choice for your small space garden. All different types of varieties are going to do really well in a container with limited space. Some of my favorites include romaine, loose leaf lettuce blends, arugula, spinach, and Swiss chard. Tip number 3 is companion planting. This is a great way to maximize the space in your garden. Planting multiple plants together also allows for better pest control, pollination, and just overall improving the health of your plant. I like to do this every year with my herb garden, so here are a few herb companions: basil, rosemary, oregano, thyme, parsley, dill. All of these herbs are going to grow really well together. If you're planting tomatoes in your small space garden, there's quite a few companions. They include basil, marigolds, lettuces, and carrots. Marigolds in particular can help keep away unwanted pests and insects, and basil is said to enhance the flavor of your tomatoes. If you're a pepper lover like me, popular companions include oregano, marjoram, basil, onions, and lettuces. Similar to tomatoes, basil will help your peppers taste better, and oregano, marjoram, and lettuces acts as a ground cover around your peppers. This helps to crowd out weeds and unwanted insects from getting to your plants. Another way I like to take advantage of companion planting is by planting multiple lettuces together. Lettuce has all different companions, but a few of my favorites to mix together that I think grow really well together is anything from spinach to arugula, romaine, and leaf lettuces. You can really experiment and grow a whole bunch of different lettuces in the same small space. My final tip for this video is going to be succession planting. This is a great way to make sure you have a continuous supply and you always have something to harvest in your garden. Succession planting is the practice of seeding your crops at intervals of 7 to 21 days. So maybe you have a few plants already growing in your container like I do here, and then I'm going to go ahead and sow some new seeds. That way I always have a continuous supply to harvest from. I really enjoy doing this with my leafy greens, my green onions, and chives. I'm just showing a close-up of the container here. You can see the larger ones that have already grown to full size. And I've gone ahead and sowed a few more seeds into the container, so as I harvest and use these green onions, I have new fresh growth popping up in the bottom. This is a foolproof way to utilize your small space and make sure that you always have something fresh growing in the garden. Here is my lettuce container. You can see the larger growth and then the smaller little seedlings that have popped up. It also does really well for how the plant grows. Look how dense and full this lettuce is. And I'm going to show you by pulling back some of the leaves here that I do still have the smaller growth in the corners. Just make sure that the seedlings that are smaller are still getting adequate sunlight. I also do this with my herbs. Here's an example of my dill. So lots of growth happening, and I've sown a bunch of seeds in the bottom. So as I trim this away, I have more fresh dill growing.
This is $20. But it's ready to go. You just put your plants and your sod in it. Anybody need more time? This one is, remember she talked about taking advantage of the height. So this one is a planter that's got different levels, and you can have these plants in a freestanding thing rather than just on the ground. This is $39, Amazon. All right, here's the next one. This is a patio. These are plants, suggestions of plants. Now, Johnny's Seeds, there's two places Kathy recommends. Johnny's Seeds is in the States. The next one's in BC. Johnny's Seeds, this is a patio greens set. So for $42, you could buy all of these plants ready to go. She asked, could you buy seeds anywhere like Walmart? Well, yes, you could, but two things. This is talking about container gardening. So these are plants that are going to be small. So that's the point of this. You also, if you want to be sustainable, you want to be able to gather seeds from the plants and use them again the next time. And those are not typically what you'd find at a hardware store or Walmart. This is West Coast Seeds. This is in BC. And if you want to get closer, it's listing a whole bunch of different plants here in alphabetical order that they have available. But anyway, that's a really good one, West Coast Seeds. You can look it up online. Everybody done with that? Okay. All right. I wanted to remind you about the website that I talked about at the beginning because some people have come in. Preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. I have handouts that have that address on it. What I have on the web on the handouts are videos that you can access from the website. They're all YouTube free that we've made. We've made 430 videos, and it lists the ones that have to do with what we talked about today. And each day the handout will address the topics of that day and where to get them. And this seminar is being recorded. It'll be on the website. It'll be so these are the categories. The first one on the website is live seminars like this one. The next one is everything to do with country living, and there's a whole bunch of them, and I'm not going to take the time right now to tell you them. But I want to point out that at the very top of the website is a thing with that thumbs up. It says recommended resources. And I wanted to show you, remember we talked about it's great to have 430 resource videos and of course anything you can find on YouTube to help you. But if the grid goes down and the internet's no more, now you're handicapped. So I have a list of printed, most of them Adventist made materials, books on country living. The first one, of course, is Ellen White's book, Country Living. You can buy that at ABC or online, or you can even get it at the Ellen White Estates free, as a digital. The next one is called Sustainable Preparedness. This is in paperback and ebook. This is the seminar we went to that made us move back in the country. Country Living. Crystal Witten was here last year. She was in the tent next door. I was videoing that, and I've got all the videos of hers. She has a 600-page book on country living that she was selling here at camp meeting time. You can get it from Amazon. The next one is not an Adventist. I believe it's a Mormon. It's called Strategic Relocation. It's a phenomenal book. What happened is this guy made his living working with architects to help really wealthy people build a secret room in their house, a safe room, a bomb shelter kind of a thing. When Y2K came along, people went to him and said, "Where should I move?" He says, "Well, that's not what I do." He said, "Yeah, but you know more than anybody else." So he and his son did a whole bunch of research, and they printed this book, and they've analyzed all around the world, different locations, and then zero in, and you can look at a particular geographic location, and it'll tell you everything from economics and whether they like homeschooling and what the government's like, and et cetera, et cetera. Really good book, Strategic Relocation. You Can Survive. This is Jerry Franklin. Many of you probably remember him. He's from British Columbia. He passed away. His family is probably here. I haven't seen them yet. But I think his widow's name is Linda. And I don't remember the son's name. I thought I saw him earlier. Huh? Jed? Jed. So I did see him walking by. Yeah. Okay, well, if you see her, tell her I'm promoting their book. And then the next one is The Time Has Come Out of the Cities. This is Dave Westbrook. He's a Adventist. Was a pastor, and he had a ministry, has a ministry about getting into the country. And then The Country Way is the gentleman. He used to work at PUC, taught biology, and Dr. Amy, he wrote the book The Country Way, and we'll tell you more about him later. And then the next one you may have never heard of. When the Country Living book came out, they made a companion book by E.A. Sutherland and Arthur White, and it's called From City to Country Living, and it's a kind of a follow-up to Ellen White's Country Living book. And this is my book. This is called Sustainable Country Living, A Guide to Living Through Troubled Times, a detailed look at moving out of the cities and preparing for a peaceful country lifestyle. You can get it in paperback, ebook, audiobook. It's available on Amazon, or the audiobook is Audible, Amazon, and Apple iTunes. My suggestion is if you want one, you get a printed one, because if the internet goes down, the other two aren't going to work. So my suggestion is do a printed one. So that ends the seminar today. Tomorrow, alternatives to the grids on which we depend: the food grid, power grid, water grid, heat grid, financial grid, information grid, and the medical grid. Wednesday, leaving the city, the trends that are going on for people leaving the cities right now, which is making it harder for us to leave the cities because of supply and demand. Spiritual reasons to move in the country. When are we instructed to move? And Sunday law movements. Thursday, finding ideal property, what to look for and how to find it. Friday, the spiritual part, preparation or presumption, balancing physical and spiritual preparation. And again, we're going to have an in-person testimony by someone here on campus who God gave them country property. To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.